Good night, Mr. VPAC. Pleasant good night to you, sir. Might know me well is Ras. Just come up here, man, for the video yesterday, or take a day for yesterday, the video make, man. Yeah, sure, man, make the video with the shark guy there. You know, that man put out the man body. The service me know is what kind of suppression they get, or what, but that man put out the man body. They see what going on out in my body. And send a video for see what going on, man. See what I could do for you, man. Come in and understand what going on is does not nice, man. Now we gotta move out to this little hut, you see?
This deep dive, we are examining a really specific and deeply impactful set of documents. They detail a situation of profound housing insecurity and alleged immediate retaliation in Guyana.
Exactly. Yeah. And these accounts, they come directly from the advocacy group VPAC. They provide a vivid, almost a chronological record of what happens when these big systemic housing promises collide with, rapid oil-fueled development.
So our mission today is to really unpack that sequence.
Yes. We're going from years of neglect to this sudden, very public crisis. We need to understand the systemic claims being made about who is and who isn't benefiting from housing allocation.
And then analyze the deeply personal consequences when a vulnerable person speaks out. Okay, so let's get into it. We're tracing a story that moves from this long, quiet period of neglect to an immediate, painful crisis. And it seems to be triggered simply by the act of public exposure.
That's the core of it. What we see here through these sources is a citizen who appears to have waited patiently for, decades, and then allegedly suffers this rapid, punitive response the moment he exposes the failing system.
And to really feel the weight of that alleged retaliation, we have to start where it all began. We have to understand the foundational injustice.
It's crucial, because this wasn't just some minor administrative error. The sources paint this as a protracted denial of dignity.
Okay, so for you, the listener, let's set the scene. Here's the starting scenario, as it's reported in the sources. We're talking about a man who was promised a house lot, which is a life-changing asset, but has been waiting for that specific lot for more than a year and a half.
In the most immediate sense, yes. But the sources strongly suggest a much, much longer history of need.
And the context of that wait is it's key to grasping the scale of the neglect here.
Absolutely. He wasn't waiting at home in some other apartment. The sources confirm he was forced to live in a temporary guard hut.
In the same development area.
He was literally watching everything else happen around him.
And that detail, it just perfectly distills the contradiction in this story. The sources highlight this stark, almost cruel contrast. While he's stuck in this tiny temporary shelter,
the development around him is moving at lightning speed.
Right. Roads are being installed, utilities are being laid out, and actual houses are actively being built for other people.
Yet the sources detail that despite all this visible progress, this one individual remains, and this is a quote, ignored. The claim is explicit. He was left without answers, without official action, and critically without any dignity.
The part about the follow-up or lack thereof really stands out to me. The documents indicate he approached authorities repeatedly, trying to get a resolution.
And the government bodies reportedly just failed to respond at all.
It's a silence that speaks volumes about priorities, doesn't it? If you see all this progress happening right in front of you, but you, the person literally guarding that progress, are left behind, well, the neglect starts to feel intentional.
And if we zoom out from that personal tragedy, that pattern of selective attention, focusing resources on the new construction while ignoring basic human obligations, that brings us to the deeper questions.
The questions about the housing allocation process itself. This isn't just about one missed application.
No, this is about systemic claims of unfair prioritization.
Exactly. So let's shift focus to those alleged structural issues. It starts, ironically, with the very infrastructure they are building.
Right. The sources raise two parallel concerns about the development. First, the basic municipal attention seems fractured. While new roads are being installed for the new lots, VPAC claims that fundamental road maintenance is still missing in the wider community.
So it's not comprehensive development, it's highly targeted.
Very targeted. It suggests the effort is for specific beneficiaries, leaving long-term residents and prior obligations unfulfilled.
And here is where the story, according to the sources, takes this extraordinary turn. The waiting resident, watching all this rapid construction, introduces a deeply significant and troubling allegation.
And what's fascinating here is the specific detail he provides to explain what he sees as the bottleneck. He claims that most of the occupied lots currently under construction are being allocated for and occupied by Spanish-speaking Venezuelans.
That is a major point of tension. How does that allegation connect to the situation for long-term Guyanese citizens?
Well, it creates this stark, immediate contrast that fundamentally challenges the perceived fairness of the entire process. The sources quote, "The man stating that Guyanese citizens, people like himself, have been applying for and waiting for land since the 1990s.
Since the 90s, we're talking about potentially 3 decades of waiting.
3 decades. So on one hand, you have a timeline measured in decades for native applicants.
Yeah.
And on the other, you have rapid, visible allocation and construction allegedly happening for recent arrivals. Precisely. That juxtaposition speaks directly to a perceived lack of security in the allocation process for those long-term national applicants. The sources really paint a picture where the system appears to reward speed and perhaps certain political priorities, while completely bypassing the established waiting lists.
So it suggests a profound structural tension where this rapid national development isn't translating into equity for existing citizens.
Exactly. It's a huge disconnect.
Okay, but it does raise the question of evidence. VPAC, as an advocacy group, is highlighting this narrative. Do the sources give any broader context or administrative details to back up this extraordinary claim?
The sources primarily rely on what's visible on the ground. The rapid construction, the language spoken by the new occupants, and, the extreme disparity between that visible progress and the documented neglect of this specific applicant.
So VPAC's role here is to amplify his lived experience.
Yes, to bring this perceived structural failure to public attention, arguing that this situation can't just be anecdotal. It highlights a system that, intentionally or not, is neglecting its own long-term applicants.
And VPAC didn't just document this and walk away. The source material notes they revisited him specifically to stand in solidarity to make sure his story was amplified.
And that act of public solidarity, framing the information as this direct effort to compel authorities to intervene, is the critical action.
That sets up the next dramatic part of the story.
Yes. VPAC's involvement turned a private, protracted grievance into a high-stakes public spotlight, which, according to the sources, yielded immediate and, very negative consequences.
And that's where the story just accelerates with brutal speed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the sharp turn this situation took. It goes from bureaucratic inaction over 2 years to this hyper-responsive crisis management.
It's the alleged transition from institutional neglect to immediate retaliation. It just demonstrates the extraordinary power of public exposure in this context.
So the individual at the center of this is named Mr. Quincy Julian. He had been living in that guard hut for over 2 years. And as he expressed it in the sources, his initial goal was incredibly modest.
Not a handout.
Not a handout, just a chance to work and live with dignity, secured by the lot he was promised.
And the acceleration is just shocking. VPAC highlighted his situation publicly just 2 days ago. It was fresh news, pushing the reality of his 2-year plight into the daylight.
And the response timeline?
Immediate. The sources report the definitive consequence arrived literally last evening.
Last evening. He was suddenly asked to leave the hut and was seen padding up what little he owns.
That is an incredibly swift and, you could say, punitive response compared to the 2 years of silence that came before it.
It raises the obvious question, why now? Why the sudden, decisive action after 2 years of complete indifference?
And the sources anticipate that question. They provide the alleged reason, which is perhaps the most disturbing detail of this entire dive.
The stated reason is absolutely crucial here. He was asked to leave.
Not because he did anything wrong, but because his poverty was exposed.
Wow.
The implication is crystal clear. The offense wasn't his presence. It was the visibility of his suffering.
So if we accept the narrative laid out by the advocacy group, this suggests the response wasn't about justice or intervention.
No, it was damage control. The system allegedly tolerated his poverty when it was invisible, but moved immediately to punish him, to displace him, the moment his vulnerability became a matter of public record.
That reframed the entire dynamic of advocacy then. Instead of exposure leading to help, it allegedly led to further displacement.
It confirms the idea that the visibility of systemic failure is a liability to be removed, not a problem to be solved.
And that immediate punitive action, according to VPAC, was timed to maximize the human cost.
Which is so essential to emphasize here.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the specific layered vulnerability this action created. The eviction happened smack in the middle of the rainy season.
And just days before Christmas.
You couldn't pick a more cruel time to cast someone out.
And on top of that, the sources stress the profound absurdity of the setting. This forced displacement is happening in an oil-rich country filled with empty homes in the same community he had been guarding.
The resources are right there, the wealth, the housing, the development, it's all visible, yet the most vulnerable person in that immediate area is being expelled.
And the sources also underscore Mr. Julian's specific physical vulnerability, a detail that just compounds the injustice. They point out that he is barely 3 feet tall.
So he's someone who already faces major obstacles in just securing employment and stability.
Exactly. Life has already dealt him a difficult hand. The lack of that promised house lot removes his last real pathway to a stable future. Losing the guard hut wasn't just losing shelter. For someone with his disadvantages, that hut was a foothold in the local economy. It allowed him to be employed as a watchman.
So by pushing him out, the sources claim authorities are pushing him further into deep insecurity. The promised lot was his chance to build a life.
And the eviction represents the system choosing, allegedly, optical damage control over human necessity.
Which leads directly to the emphatic call to action that VPAC uses to conclude their report. They frame this tragedy not just as Mr. Julian's struggle, but as a moral test for the community and for the government.
The sources are very direct. They state plainly, we cannot allow this to continue. And VPAC crystallized the 2 fundamental principles they argue were violated by this swift alleged retribution.
And those 2 principles are, no one should be punished for being poor. And perhaps more controversially in a political context, no one should be displaced for exposing their vulnerability. They are challenging the very mechanism of an alleged systemic cover-up.
And the sources clearly outline the demand for accountability, directing their plea right to the highest levels of governance. There is a direct call for the Government of Guyana to intervene immediately in Mr. Julian's case. And it's backed by VPAC's promise that they will not look the other way, which signals that this public battle is still very much active.
This whole narrative is just a powerful, concise demonstration of the alleged contrast between high-level national promises and the low-level, immediate human realities.
You can trace the complete journey. Decades of waiting, a moment of public truth, and then immediate catastrophic personal consequences. All of it set against this backdrop of newly acquired national wealth.
So the takeaway here for you, the listener, is the way this rapid wealth influx, this oil-rich country status, is being allocated and prioritized. The sources suggest a systemic failure where the benefits of development are captured by some groups very quickly,
while long-term citizens, especially the most vulnerable, are left behind, and allegedly even punished when they point out the imbalance.
So what does this all mean for you? This deep dive revealed a razor-sharp contrast between promises and reality. It's exposed a profound disconnect between national development, all that visible housing construction, the oil wealth, and the basic security of vulnerable citizens. We've seen the critical role of advocacy from VPAC and the severe alleged cost of that public exposure for Mr. Quincy Julian.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this situation raises an incredibly important question for you to consider. When rapid development and significant wealth, fueled by resources like oil, enter a community, why does the visibility of extreme protracted poverty become a liability to be removed through eviction and displacement rather than an urgent first priority problem to be addressed? What does that alleged prioritization reveal about who the system is actually designed to serve and who ultimately bears the risk when political promises fail?
That's something to mull over long after this discussion ends. We hope this deep dive into these powerful sources has given you a clearer, more informed view of the situation and the critical stakes involved in reporting on systemic injustice.